Okay, let's get started. So hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining me today. My name is Trisha Thomas. I'm a partner here at Fourlane, and this week we're going to talk about cycle count. So let's talk a little about Fourlane. So here at Fourlane, we're a service-based company focused on getting you data to make good decisions in your business. So right now, for us, this is what we call summary conversion season. So we've got clients that reach out to us to either they want to start a fresh new QuickBooks file, start off small, clean data, or they're coming from an outside system. So we have processes that allow us to assist customers converting from pretty much any software out there. We can also help eliminate outside products that have to be used, such as external Excel sheets or inventory management systems. We can simplify with our clients not only just, kind of processes and how they're doing stuff, but get that data moved over into QuickBooks. That way we can get them up and running. And this is part of that service when it comes to that product conversion. Another thing that we always talk to clients about is consistency and processes are very key. So when we think about making decisions, we want to make sure that we work with our clients to create that process. We can also document that process and then train their team on the process. That way, making sure by following those processes, you've got that good, healthy data to make some decisions. We also can do the periodic reviews with them, different team members, to make sure that they're staying on track with their processes, they're closing out the books so that data is there for that decision making. Okay, we've also have some clients that once we get them set up in their QuickBooks file, they want to continue the support and closing out the books each month or some financial reporting and some reviews. So we can definitely help with that. So anything you see on this screen, and of course there's a lot more that we do, this is way that we support our clients, helping them be successful in QuickBooks and have the data that they need to make the decisions in their business. Okay, so let's kind of talk about our topic. So I told you guys we are going to talk about cycle count today. So I also want to, because cycle count is part of our inventory process, I want to go over with you guys some other functions revolving around our inventory process. So I want to look at the inventory center and kind of just talk through that, what this is used for, how you can use it as your guide. And then I'm going to talk about categories and how we can use those as part of our cycle count. We'll go through the actual cycle count process. And then, of course, we always talk about reporting throughout. Okay, so what is cycle counting? So cycle counting is an inventory technique that allows a company to check the accuracy of their inventory records without counting every item in the warehouse. So if you think about a business that has 1,000+ inventory items, for them to count those items every single month, they would have to shut down operations for 2 or 3 days or pull several team members to be able to count all of those. By using this method, we choose just a select grouping of items. That way we can count them quickly and we don't have to shut down the whole warehouse operations. Okay, so kind of looking at, I'm going to jump over to my sample file. So there are 2 types of items that are included in cycle count, and that's going to be our inventory part and our inventory assemblies. And that's because those are the only types of items inside of QuickBooks that maintain a quantity on hand. Okay, so let's get started by taking a look at our inventory center. So on our home screen, you've got your vendor center, your customer center, your payroll center. To get to your inventory center, you've got your drop down here under inventory, and you can see you've got a lot of different functions that you can do, from viewing your item list to creating new items, adjusting inventory. Of course, here's our cycle count we're going to go over today. We can create purchase orders, receive items. But what we're going to look at is our inventory center. So I always tell clients when I'm going through design or I'm training them, this is where our warehouse managers usually kind of live in. This gives them the information they need about their inventory items. And of course, we always want it to match what the warehouse shows. So just kind of looking at this screen, the default is for active inventory and assemblies. You do have the option of a drop down where you can see all inventory assemblies. That's going to be our active and inactive. We can see just inventory, just assemblies, and of course filter by quantity. Okay, now what you see on the right-hand side, excuse me, on the left-hand side, these are our different items, and you can see as I switch items, the information changes on our right side. So the right side is actually the details of each item. So you can see here this pull cover AQ, that's the name that's set up inside of QuickBooks. It gives you the description. It gives you who the preferred vendor is and the manufacturer part number. So we always teach clients, the more data we put in the system, the more reporting that we have, and we allow that accounting file to do the work for us. So these aren't required, but we definitely, if you know and you have a preferred vendor, put it in there. So then we can do some automation when it comes around creating purchase orders. And of course, we have their part number. If you've got units of measure turned on in the file, you would see this is your lowest unit of measure. Coming down here to the costing piece, your average cost. This is based on when the item is purchased. It's taking that average cost. This piece here is down from the item setup. So when we created this item, the cost was $750, or the last time we updated the item card. We've got our sales price, and then here's our markup and margin based on sales to cost. In this middle section, this is about our quantity on hand. So what we would see, what we'd expect to see in our warehouse would be that quantity on hand. I always teach clients that quantity on hand versus available quantity can sometimes be different if we have sales orders that we haven't fulfilled for our customers. But for cycle count, our focus is this quantity on hand because that should be what's in our warehouse. Okay, then coming over here, you see the report section. So you can see these are different links. So we've got a quick report. And what this is the activity of the item. So all purchasing and selling of the item, you can see those different transactions and the quantity that it affects. We can see our purchasing and sales orders that we've done on the item. Our next line, this is our physical inventory worksheet. So this worksheet here is all the active inventory and assembly items. And so if you were going to do a full warehouse inventory account, this would be the worksheet that we would use. Now you can customize this worksheet. So maybe when you give this out to a warehouse personnel, they don't need to know a preferred vendor or a category. And you might not even want them to know the accounting quantity on hand because you want them to go count. And so just like we can do in other reports, we can customize this report to display what we want. So if we wanted to remove the quantity on hand, we would just uncheck that box. So now we can just, that's removed. They can just focus on that physical count. You can also, you can see very small, there's 3 little gray dots. If I hover on those and hold my mouse down and move it over, that's another way to remove columns. Okay, so coming back to my inventory center, we've got our stock status. So this is the report warehouse personnel use when it comes to reordering. So it gives that minimum that we want to keep on hand, and then everything that's going on with that item, what we have on sales orders, assemblies, purchase order to help focus on what do we need to reorder. Down here, this is our inventory valuation summary. So this is saying as of this date, this is all of my items for inventory and assemblies and what I have on hand and what their asset value is. So this is what ties back to the balance sheet. When we see that asset value, this is what our balance sheet should show. If we need to make an adjustment, for example, if we see that this reel, that it shows 14, but we have less or more, we need to make sure that we're using the transaction for an inventory adjustment. To do this adjustment, we don't want to do journal entries. We never want to do that. Okay, back to the inventory center. Next, you have if an item is used in an assembly, You can select that and it will tell you what assembly this item is used in. And then this is our negative inventory listing. So I definitely recommend that if we don't check it once a week, minimum check it once a month. This tells you if you have inventory in your file. And of course, we know we never want to keep negative inventory in our file. Okay, so this is kind of high level on our inventory center. You can see that you've got transaction detail here, you've got different filters, but now let's talk about categories. So categories, before they were introduced in 23, I'm gonna use pumps as my kind of demonstration for you. If we wanted to group our items, to do that, we had to create what we call header, sub, or parent child. If I come over to my item list and I type in the word pump, you can see that pump is an actual inventory item. And so what would happen is, the goal is that I want to track a group of pumps and I want to underneath have a list of all of my pumps that fall into that group. That's a great concept. The problem is because pumps had to be set up as an item, when people would create a purchase order and receive inventory, it opens up for human error to do it under the pumps header. And that's where you see this other here. That means because sometime in this file, someone has received inventory at the header pumps instead of at one of the sub-accounts of the details of pumps. So in 23, they introduced to where now we can have true groupings or categories. Let's come over there and let's take a look at that. If we go to list, and we go to category list, you can see that everything, whenever you build a new file, if you're not using categories or you upgrade your file into 23 and on, everything is going to be listed as uncategorized. Okay, so you can see here, here's all my items. So there's my pump right there. And let's just to say that I now want to set up my actual groups. So I'm going to use Anchor as an example. And I'm going to search for Anchor, and what it's looking at is the description for anything that says Anchor in there. And so I've got, enough that I want to create a group or a category so that I can track all of my anchors. So how I can do this, I went ahead and I set up the category name Anchor. You can see nothing is there at this time. And now I'm going to move those items from my uncategorized over to my Anchor. I'm going to choose select all, and then we've got this batch action. I'm going to say move to a different category, and I'm going to say move it to my Anchor category, and I'm going to say save, and now it's moved. So if we search for Anchor now and uncategorized, nothing is there. If we come over to Anchor, we've got them listed there. Now let's go back to our inventory evaluation and take a look at how good that looks. If we come up at the top, we have this nice grouping of Anchor, and we don't have to worry about if I type in my item list. If I type in the word Anchor, there is no header named Anchor. So this allows me to group my inventory by a certain type, and I don't have to worry about the concern of human error or someone receiving to a header Anchor account. So we've got Anchor up here, and then everything else is down in uncategorized. So it's a really good feature. 24 introduced a lot of reports that you can run, so they're really doing a lot to be, help in that inventory space to be able to manage your different groups. Okay, perfect. So now let's go and let's talk about the cycle count process itself. So when a company has so many items that it doesn't make sense for them to do a monthly count because of the downtime it would take, they do what we call a cycle count. So they decide on a group that they want what I call spot check with a count. It could be the certain categories. It could be maybe high asset values, or when they decide to purchase an item, they can actually set up how often they want to count it. Now, that's not a standard field inside of QuickBooks. And so to get there, if we want to set up per item and decide how often we want to count it, we can do that using a custom field. So I'm back at my item list, and I went ahead and set it up so you guys could see it. So if we select custom fields, I created one called cycle count, and then I just did it kind of, easy peasy, and I just did monthly, quarterly, and annually. So we always like, if possible, to use the multiple choice, and that way you kind of are deciding what options you want to give them. And so you can set it, I just picked monthly, quarterly, and annual. We can make this required, so every time a new item is created, they have to choose how often that you want to do the physical count or the cycle count on them. So it's a really good way to kind of focus on how often, if it's something small like screws, maybe we only want to, do an annual count. But if it's something high dollar, maybe like these pool covers or maybe a pump that we want to count every month because of the asset value, we can choose to do that by using this custom field. Okay? Okay, perfect. So I want to take you to the cycle count. So that's found under inventory and cycle count. Okay, and so what this screen is showing you is that these are all of the cycle counts. Let's make it a little bit bigger. These are the cycle counts that have been done in the last 30 days. They do get removed after the 30-day period. So you can see it kind of gives you some information about when they were done. These are all open because I was playing in the file and didn't finish it, but I want to start a new one for you guys so that you can see it. So you have an option of either exporting this report to Excel, or if you have your Android device attached, you can actually send it to the Android device, as well as assign it to a warehouse worker. So inside of your vendor center, you have the option, and I set myself up so you guys could see. I set myself up as a warehouse worker. I just named them warehouse worker. But the key for them to show up to be assigned at a cycle count is under additional information or vendor type, you have to choose warehouse user. Okay, if I don't choose that, it's not going to come up as an option to assign them a cycle count. Let's go back to our cycle count and let's go ahead and create a new one, and let's kind of talk through that and all your different options. So create a new cycle count. You can see here, of course, the date that we're creating it. This count ID is default inside of QuickBooks. Here's that assigned to. I've only created one, so I have myself. I can leave it unassigned, or I can assign it to someone. I'm going to assign it to TT. And now you have here the body, and this is our find and select. So this is saying what inventory items do we want to count. So once we hit find and select, we now have another box open. And so you can see here, I've got my categories. So I can choose that anchor category. Now everything is selected that's inside there. I can clear that, and I can do find. So if I wanted to choose names, so maybe I choose that pool cover. I search for everything that has the word pool in it. Or what I showed you guys with the custom fields, I can drop down and say, I want to do the custom fields, and I want to count the one that is monthly. And I can say search for it. Now, what it went through and it looked in the background, and all of those items that I had chose monthly for the custom field, it selected those items to count. Okay, so you can see you've got a lot of different ways. Now, if you wanted to, I'm just going to research this. And like I said, you can't just pick items. If you wanted to just, what you wanted to choose, you own what you want to count. Okay, so this is again just spot checking. You can see here, I can select all. I can select if my quantity is above 0. Of course, I can clear all. I don't know why you would, but you can include inactive. Okay, I'm just going to select the ones that I did, and I'm going to say add selected items. Okay, so now here this is saying these are the items that I chose that I want to do a physical count on. I can delete them if I want. I can add a note, anything like that. But I'm going to go ahead. I don't have my Android device. So I'm going to create and export to Excel. Use that. Okay, now let's look at our Excel. Now what you see is it carried into Excel that count ID that QuickBooks assigns, the date we created it, those items, their description, what the QuickBooks shows, the quantity on hand. This is, of course, what we're going to fill in for our physical count, and this is who I assigned it to. We can put notes in here. Okay, so at this point, we need to save it, and then we can print it, we can, email it, whatever we need to do. So I'm going to go ahead and save it for us. And I'm going to just put it on my desktop, make it easy. And we'll just call it 11:15. Make it easy. You want to make sure it's an Excel document. Okay. Now, again, just like I showed you on the physical worksheet, maybe you don't want them to see the quantity. So when you can customize this and remove what you don't want them to see. Maybe they just need the item, the description, and this blank column. You guys will own what you send to them to be able to do this count. Okay, so let's go ahead, and I'm just going to update so that we can see it's done. And I'm going to put 55. I'm going to put 2. I'm going to put 125. 25 and 150. And I'm going to put a note here so that you can see damage in warehouse. Okay, so now if we go back to our accounting file, what we see is the one that I did today on the 15th shows open. It's waiting for us to bring back this count. I'm going to go ahead and close out my worksheet. And you can see that I now have this button that says import from Excel. Oh, let it go ahead and catch up a little. Okay, so now I've got this button that says import from Excel. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And now it's wanting me to go find my file, go to my desktop. There it is. Now it's going to bring in that physical count that we just did. So if we look here, it now shows that this is what the physical count shows. It even added our note that I put in there. And you can see the pending review is because that it's a different number than what the accounting file. So it wants to make sure this is what you want to update the accounting file with. Complete means because there was no change, so 0 change. Okay, so at this point, we now make the determination, is this what we want to update our file with? And I'm going to go ahead and say yes. I'm going to select all of those, and I'm going to do back action, and I'm going to adjust quantity on hand. So I'm letting the system do the work for me instead of manually going in and create this inventory adjustment. Okay, so you can see automatically populated the date. So you want to verify because we might have counted one day and now we're updating. So if we had counted yesterday, we would want to change our adjustment date to the day that we counted. We want to make sure that your adjustment account is whatever cost of goods sold that you post your inventory adjustments to. And then, of course, it brought in our items. It brought in what the new quantity is and what the quantity difference. Okay. As soon as I save this, this is our financial impact. So we're going to increase or decrease our quantity on hand and asset value on the balance sheet. That asset dollar difference is what's going to post on our profit and loss to this COGS account. Okay, so let me go ahead and save it. Okay, so now we can go ahead and we can mark this closed because we completed this. And we're saying yes, that means that we've completed it. We do not need anything else done with it. So now that is marked closed. These are ones that I have exported, but I haven't imported the count back in, so it's sitting as open. Okay, so kind of just looking back over, what we did today, focus on that cycle count of grabbing a group of items and counting them quickly so we don't have to shut down our warehouse operations. That changed our inventory valuation. That changed that physical count, changed that asset value based on that physical count. We always want our warehouse to match what our accounting file shows. And you guys kind of own how often do we want to do cycle counts. Some clients do it every month. Some do it once a quarter. You guys will figure out, but the good thing about at least starting out with doing it every month is this allows you to not only make sure that our accounting file and our warehouse match at all times, but this is also a way to identify, are our inventory process being followed? Do we need to see what's going on? If we continually to have to make these adjustments, we need to take a step back and say, where is the gap in the process for our inventory that we continue to have to make adjustments? Because everything should always, if every transaction is put in the file correctly, then we shouldn't have to make inventory adjustments. There's of course going to be damage here and there, but regular, we should not have to go and search. If our accounting files shows 1,800, for example, for this spring, that's how many should be in our warehouse. Okay? Okay, you guys, so I'm going to look over and see if we have any questions before I let you guys get back to your day. So let's see what we've got for question-wise. Oh, goodness gracious. So can the lot number be included in the cap sheet? I'm 99% sure, but let's come in here and let's test it. That's always my favorite thing. So coming in here to my company preferences, I'm going to turn lots on. Okay. And this is my sample file, so I do a lot. So once I close everything, most of your reports, you can add other columns, but let's just double check, make sure. So if we come back to our inventory center, I'm going to first test it at our physical worksheet. And we're going to see if we can add a lot. Maybe not. We have location, we have our serial number. Let me double check and make sure. I might be wrong, maybe you cannot. It doesn't look like, because we can't, and I'm going to just double check. So they will not allow us to edit these. Sometimes you have options to add columns, but that is not an option when it comes to the cycle count itself, which is very strange because you want to affect the lot if necessary. So I'm definitely going to take that down as some feedback on some updates that would be really great to have, but great question, great question. And that is all that I see for questions. So thank you guys so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And of course, please reach out if you need any information on anything I shared today. And of course, our other services that we offered, we would love to be part of your team and get you guys set up inside of QuickBooks. So thanks again. Have a good rest of your day.